Man orders pizza every day for 10 years. Then cops make shocking discovery. When a man orders pizza every day for a decade, you tend to notice. But when he suddenly stops, it's impossible to ignore. What the delivery team found when they checked on him was more shocking than they could have ever imagined. Kirk Alexander was not the kind of man who stood out in a crowd. He lived quietly, kept to himself, and rarely ventured beyond the comforting walls of his small house in Salem, Oregon. To many, he might have seemed like just another face in the sea of anonymity. But to the employees of the local Domino's Pizza, Kirk was anything but ordinary. For 10 long years, Kirk's name had become a near-daily fixture on their order screens. Same name, same address, same order. A thin-crust pepperoni pizza with extra cheese and a side of chicken wings, always arriving at roughly the same time each evening. It was as predictable as the setting sun. At first, it was just another order. But over time, the employees began to notice the rhythm of Kirk's life through his pizza requests. On the rare days when Kirk didn't place an order, they found themselves wondering, is everything okay? It wasn't just a business transaction anymore. Kirk had unintentionally become a part of their world. The interactions with Kirk were brief, but familiar. A polite thank you at the door, a small smile, sometimes a quick comment about the weather. He was soft-spoken, a man of few words, but there was a warmth about him, a quiet gratitude for this small connection in his otherwise solitary life. Outside the Domino's delivery radius, Kirk's life was shrouded in solitude. He lived alone in a modest house, tucked away from the bustle of city life. His neighbors barely knew him, save for the occasional wave across the driveway. Kirk's world was small, but it was his own, a routine he clung to with quiet determination. His days were filled with simple pleasures, rewatching old black-and-white films, listening to soft classical music, and flipping through yellowed pages of books he'd read countless times before. For Kirk, these comforts were enough. He didn't need the chaos of social events or the noise of crowded spaces. But amid the quiet, there was something he cherished more than anything, his nightly pizza ritual. The arrival of the Domino's delivery driver wasn't just a meal. It was a moment of human connection, however fleeting. That knock on the door was a lifeline, a reminder that someone, somewhere, remembered him. The pizza wasn't just food. It was stability, a comforting constant in an unpredictable world. From the perspective of the Domino's team, Kirk was more than just a regular customer. He was a part of their routine. His name on the order screen brought a sense of familiarity, a small reassurance in the fast-paced chaos of the pizza business. He's like clockwork, one of the delivery drivers had once joked. If Kirk doesn't order, you start to think the world's ending. And that wasn't far from the truth. Kirk's quiet consistency had created an invisible bond between him and the Domino's team. Though they knew little about his personal life, they felt a sense of responsibility for him. There were nights when Kirk's order didn't appear, and the team would exchange concerned glances. Maybe he's just trying something new, someone would suggest, though deep down, they all knew better. Kirk was a man of routine. His absence was an anomaly, a signal that something wasn't right. Unspoken, yet deeply felt. This connection between Kirk and the Domino's employees was built on years of routine interactions. And though none of them could have predicted it, this quiet bond would soon become a lifeline in the most unexpected way. For 10 years, Kirk Alexander's pizza order had been as dependable as the ticking of a clock. But then one day, the order didn't come. At first, no one thought much of it. Maybe he was out of town. Maybe he had finally decided to cook for himself. But when the absence stretched to 3 days, a quiet unease settled over the Domino's team. By day 5, concern turned into worry. And by day 11, it became something else entirely, fear. Kirk hasn't ordered in almost 2 weeks, whispered Sarah, one of the shift managers. Her voice carried an edge of nervousness. That's not normal. Everyone in the store felt it. The absence of Kirk's nightly call wasn't just an anomaly, it was wrong. They all knew him, in a way. He wasn't the type to suddenly disappear. The chatter among the employees grew heavier with each passing day. Speculation filled the air like the scent of fresh dough. You think something happened to him? One of the delivery drivers asked, his voice hushed as if afraid to say it out loud. Maybe he's sick, another replied, glancing at the empty order screen where Kirk's name should have been. By the end of the week, the staff couldn't ignore it anymore. The idea that something might be seriously wrong was too persistent to shake off. "We should check on him," suggested James, the store's assistant manager. But doubt lingered. Was it their place to intervene? It wasn't an easy call to make, but ultimately, concern for Kirk overrode any hesitation. James volunteered to swing by Kirk's house after his shift. As he pulled up to the small, familiar house, an eerie feeling crept over him. The lights were on. The faint flicker of a television danced behind the curtains. Everything seemed normal, too normal. James stepped up to the door and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. "Kirk? It's James from Domino's." Silence. He pressed his ear against the door. The TV murmured inside, the same familiar hum Kirk always had going when he answered the door. But there was something unsettling about the stillness. James tried calling Kirk's phone. The muffled ring echoed faintly from inside the house, but again, no answer. A gnawing sense of dread tightened in his chest. Something wasn't right. He knew it. After several more unanswered knocks and calls, James did the only thing he could think of. He called the police. Within 20 minutes, flashing blue and red lights painted the quiet street outside Kirk's home. A couple of neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, but no one came out. It was as if they too had been wrapped in the mystery of Kirk Alexander, this quiet man who had lived among them, yet remained a stranger. The officers knocked firmly on the door. "Kirk Alexander? This is the police." Nothing. With no other choice, they forced the door open. The hinges groaned, and the smell of stale air rushed out. Inside, the glow of the television cast long, flickering shadows against the walls. And then they found him. Kirk was lying on the floor, motionless. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. The phone sat just inches from his outstretched hand, as if he had been trying to call for help but couldn't reach it in time. "He's alive," one officer shouted, immediately calling for an ambulance. But barely. The sight was heartbreaking. This man, who had been a regular part of their lives for years, had been lying there alone, possibly for days, helpless and afraid. James, still outside, felt a wave of guilt and relief crash over him. What if they hadn't come? The distant wail of sirens grew louder until an ambulance screeched to a stop outside Kirk's home. Paramedics rushed in, assessing his condition with practiced urgency. Kirk's pulse was weak, his skin clammy. "He's severely dehydrated and malnourished," one of them said grimly. If he'd been here much longer, they didn't need to finish the sentence. James and the other Domino's employees who had gathered outside watched anxiously as Kirk was carefully lifted onto the stretcher and wheeled out. His eyes fluttered open for a brief moment, and for the first time in what felt like forever, they saw him alive. "He's going to be okay," a paramedic assured them before the ambulance doors shut and sped off into the night. A heavy silence hung in the air. The staff exchanged looks, knowing that their simple concern, the act of noticing when a regular customer vanished, had very likely saved his life. Back at the store, the usual hustle and bustle of pizza making felt different. Kirk was no longer just a customer. He was someone they cared about, someone they had unknowingly formed an invisible bond with. James exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the night settle in. "I'm just glad we didn't wait any longer." Kirk Alexander was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Dehydration, malnutrition, and severe weakness had left him in a perilous state, his body barely functioning after what must have been days without food, water, or assistance. The doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him, their expressions grim as they later revealed how close he had come to slipping away. If you had found him a day later, one of the doctors told the Domino's employees who had come to check on him, it might have been too late. Those words hit hard. The weight of their decision to intervene, the nagging feeling that something was wrong, those small instincts had saved a life. As Kirk lay in his hospital bed, hooked up to IVs and monitoring machines, he drifted in and out of consciousness. When he finally awoke fully, confusion clouded his mind. The last thing he remembered was struggling to reach for his phone, darkness creeping in at the edges of his vision. But now he was here alive. The nurse standing beside him smiled gently. "You have some friends at Domino's to thank for this," she said softly. Kirk's brows furrowed. Domino's? Then it hit him. Those familiar voices, the nightly ritual that had been a quiet but steady part of his existence. They had noticed. They had cared enough to act. And in that moment, Kirk felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He mattered. News of Kirk's hospitalization spread quickly through the Domino's store, and concern turned into action. A small group of employees, led by James and Sarah, decided they had to do more than just wait for updates. They organized a visit, pooling together money for a bouquet of flowers and a heartfelt card signed by everyone at the store. Walking into the hospital, the usual buzz and banter of the store were replaced by quiet apprehension. Would Kirk even want to see them? Would he be embarrassed? They didn't know what to expect. When they arrived at his room, Kirk's eyes widened in surprise. For a moment, he just stared at them, his expression unreadable. Then, his lips quivered, and a small, shaky smile appeared. "You came," he said, his voice hoarse from days without use. James stepped forward, placing the flowers on the bedside table. "Of course we did, Kirk," he said warmly. "We were worried about you." The room filled with an unspoken emotion. For so long, Kirk had lived in the shadows, unnoticed by the world beyond his small house. But here, in this moment, he realized he wasn't alone. I didn't think anyone would notice," Kirk admitted, his eyes welling up with tears. Sarah handed him the card. "We've been missing your orders," she joked lightly, trying to break the tension. "The store feels weird without you." Kirk chuckled, a weak, raspy sound but genuine. "Guess I made more of an impression than I thought." In the days that followed, the employees made it a point to check in regularly, dropping off small things like magazines, snacks, and even a stuffed version of the Domino's mascot. The one simple business relationship had transformed into something deeper, something far more human. It wasn't long before Kirk's story made its way beyond the walls of the hospital. A local journalist, intrigued by the unusual rescue, published an article titled "The Pizza Order That Saved a Life." The story gained traction online, quickly going viral. Social media platforms lit up with messages of support and admiration for the Domino's employees who had gone above and beyond for a customer. "Sometimes it's the little things that matter most," one comment read. Others shared their own experiences of unexpected kindness from delivery workers and strangers alike. The story resonated with people across the globe, sparking conversations about loneliness, community, and the importance of looking out for one another. National news outlets picked up the story, and soon the employees at the Salem Domino's found themselves in the spotlight. They were interviewed on morning talk shows, invited to company events, and even awarded free tickets to a major Domino's rally in Las Vegas. Despite the attention, the team remained humble. "We just did what anyone else would do," James said in an interview. "We noticed something was wrong, and we acted on it." But for Kirk, it meant everything. As he regained his strength, he couldn't help but reflect on how close he had come to fading away without anyone knowing. He had always seen himself as invisible, just another anonymous figure in the crowd. Now, he understood something different. He had a place and people who cared. As Kirk was discharged from the hospital weeks later, the first thing he did was place an order at Domino's. Not because he needed the food, but because he wanted to hear a familiar voice on the other end of the line. "Hey, Kirk," the voice greeted warmly. "Good to have you back." And for the first time in a long time, Kirk felt like he belonged. In the fast-paced world we live in, it's easy to overlook the small, routine interactions that shape our daily lives. A smile at the cashier, a nod to the barista, or even the casual familiarity of a regular order at a pizza place. These moments often seem insignificant. But Kirk Alexander's story is a testament to the profound impact such seemingly trivial connections can have. For 10 years, Kirk was more than just a name on an order screen. He was a part of the Domino's team's everyday life. His absence was felt because, in a subtle way, he had become an integral part of their world. His story reminds us that no interaction is ever too small to matter. It underscores a simple yet powerful truth. Checking in on someone, noticing a change, and acting on it can mean the difference between life and death. In Kirk's case, the employees at Domino's weren't just delivering pizzas. They were delivering care, empathy, and ultimately a lifeline. This incident highlights how community isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes, it's about the quiet, unspoken concern we show through everyday actions. Kirk's rescue serves as a wake-up call. How many people around us are silently struggling, waiting for someone to notice? For the Domino's staff, this experience transformed their perception of their work. What once seemed like a repetitive, transactional job turned into something much deeper, an opportunity to connect, to care, and to make a difference. James, the assistant manager who took the initiative to check on Kirk, later reflected, "We always saw him as a customer, but now I realize he was much more than that. He was a part of our extended family." Their actions did not go unnoticed. Domino's corporate headquarters recognized their efforts, awarding them with a special commendation and an invitation to the company's national rally in Las Vegas. The local community, too, expressed their gratitude, with many customers leaving notes of appreciation and even increasing their tips to show support. But beyond the accolades and the media attention, the real reward for the team was the knowledge that they had saved a life. In interviews, they spoke not of recognition, but of relief. Relief that they listened to their instincts, that they didn't ignore the warning signs, and that they had done something truly meaningful. Their story serves as an inspiration to others in the service industry, proving that being observant and compassionate in even the most routine jobs can create life-changing impacts. Kirk Alexander's story teaches us that genuine care can come from the smallest actions. Sometimes, what seems like a routine observation, such as noticing someone's daily habits, can be a sign of something far more significant. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to overlook subtle changes in the people around us. However, with just a little attention and sincere concern, we can make a profound difference and, in some cases, even save a life. Always take the time to notice and care for those around you, whether they are friends, family, or even the strangers you encounter in everyday life. Sometimes, a small gesture or a simple check-in can bring hope, comfort, and even rescue someone in their most vulnerable moments. Connection doesn't always require grand gestures. It is built through simple, genuine moments of kindness and compassion.